Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. Got another Master Duel video for you, coming at you with some more Fiendsmith Control, featuring both Bestials and Primites. Our first game here is going to be up against Malice, going second against them even. If you're interested in the deck list, that will be available at the end of the video. But this is a deck that I've been doing pretty much all of my laddering, with the exception of like maybe a few games trying out Sprite or other decks here and there. But yeah, no, I've really been liking Fiendsmith Control for the bit I've been playing of this format, and I do mean bit. I really haven't been playing too much lately. You know, obviously there was my Malice video. Yeah, I don't know. I guess the format is like still pretty much the same as it was when I made that video. I still have a lot of the similar issues of having to feel like I should be main decking Lancia, although I will say with this deck I definitely feel like I can get away more without main decking Lancia, because Fiendsmith Control just lets you play so many hand traps. So we're actually not playing Lancias in this build here. Yeah, I think that's my main gripe with playing non-Malice decks this meta, is feeling like I have to play 3 Lancia, which is a card I'm really not trying to play, but hopefully once, you know, another new meta deck joins the fray, people will be less on Malice, then there'll be less need for Lancia, and it'll actually feel good to play non-Malice decks. Anyway, going to this game in particular, we opened with 3 Bestials and the Ghost Spell. I'm using the Ghost Spell here against the Field Spell. And we've been able to make pretty good use of the Bestials here. The Baldrake did get negated, so I can't just banish this Splash Mage here, but I can certainly use Magnum Hut to banish the March Hare that the Splash Mage is targeting. Yeah, I've mentioned before in other videos, I think even my last, you know, Fiendsmith Control video, that Bestials are still quite good in this meta. It's really easy to think like, oh, Malice is using Bestials as extenders, so surely they're not good, right? No, because you can still banish a lot of really good targets, like the Splash Mage target, the Link Decoder. We also used a Bestial earlier to banish a Malice monster that had already been banished, forcing our opponent to banish their trap card instead, which was nice. Alright, so here we top decked the Imperm, I believe, here. Yeah, because we didn't have that during their turn 1. They're going to use Imperm on our Lubellion. Completely fine. I'm sorry about that. Excuse me. Yeah, so Imperm on our Lubellion is fine. Not really concerned about that. We get to still summon our Druiswarm here, and we do have Lethal on board, except our opponent does use the GWC. Now, I think our opponent did kind of misplay there. They could have waited till I went to battle phase. Because I think I was about to end my main phase when they activated the GWC there, but now that I know they're going to have more bodies on board, I'm certainly going to want to make sure that I am taking care of those, and I definitely have the ability to with what I have here. So I'm going to start with Triple Attack and just take this Red Ransom, and now we can sort of pivot into Fiendsmith stuff by linking off the Druiswarm, and of course still proc the Druiswarm effect in order to send one of my opponent's monsters. I'll get rid of Chessy Cat, just one of the defense mode monsters, and just start picking away at my opponent's board. They did gain some life points off the GWC, but they're still at 8,200, which is, like, you know, obviously well within OTK range for me here. And as soon as I summon the Lacrima, they're just going to go ahead and concede. Alright, going into our next game here. We're going first this time, and yeah, we definitely love to see a hand like this. Love to see the Ether Barrel. So, I mentioned in my last video, and some of the comments were asking about this too, about the Primite engine, about like, is it actually good to play in this deck? And I did mention in the last video that is extremely optional, and I do maintain that point. I think playing Primite in this kind of Fiendsmith Control deck is still very optional, but one thing I really do like about playing the Primite engine, there's a couple of things. Well, actually, no, there's really one main thing, that it gives you more things to do on turn 1. Playing this deck without Primite, which I have tried in the past, the thing I kind of didn't like about it is that if you go first, there are a lot of hands where, like, you just don't play anything because you open, like, all hand traps because you're playing so many more hand traps, or you only open, like, Lubellion, so you can really only summon a Lubellion, go regain to pass on turn 1. It's a lot harder to have turn 1 plays without the Primite stuff. The other nice thing about the Primite stuff is that Lordly Load plus Roar gives you more engine starters for the Fiendsmith plays too. So having the Fiendsmith stuff on turn 1 I think is pretty important for this deck. That's why I tend to like the Primite stuff. Drill Beam is honestly in this format just kind of like a side bonus. In the past it was kind of the main reason to play the Primite engine, and it gets a lot of decks, it's still really good, but I'm mainly using the Primite engine just again to have turn 1 plays. So here our opponent's going to use Fuelos to cut us short of our Fiendsmith stuff, but I don't really feel bad about ending there because I still have Super Poly, Phantasmate, and Magnum Hut. So I feel like we still have a lot of options. This Centurion opponent really surprised me with the Diabell Star. I was really scared it was going to be Snake Eye stuff. It's going to be mostly Azamita stuff, which does still mean, of course, the Ilya Sylvia we'll have to deal with. But we do have Super Poly, and I think we do have options as well to handle it. Yeah, they're going to go for Murashilago first, and then that's going to add Wanted. Yeah, I was pretty convinced they were going to go into Snake Eye at some point here. That's one of the main reasons why I held on to the Super Poly for so long. Well, also because, I mean, if you look at our opponent's board state, we really haven't needed to use it up to this point. Alright, so here's the Diabell Star coming back to hand. And then fusing into Ilya Sylvia. Alright, once is going to give them a draw here, and then finally they're using the Synchro Rumble on the Atri. I was thinking about using Magnum Hut, but I decided to let them revive the Atri, that way I could flip up Super Poly here, and then eat the Ilya Sylvia, as well as cut them off from their tuner, making a Mud Dragon. Alright, they're going to summon the Gargoyle by sending the Field Spell, but it doesn't look like they have any other follow-up, which is very, very good for me, of course. This Crimson Dragon on their field does not have anything to do, which is, again, very good for me. Gonna end phase Magnum Hut, that way I can get another Ether Barrel and start doing the cycle all over again. Being able to search Ether Barrel off Magnum Hut is actually another very, very nice thing about this deck, because, like, even beyond turn 1, this kind of style of being able to go Magnum Hut into add Ether Barrel for follow-up plays is very important for the grind game, which, of course, this deck is going to get to a lot of those. And here my opponent's going to concede right after the Requiem use because they realize I still have Ether Barrel, I have access to Drill Beam, and it'll be pretty easy for me to start looping them there. Alright, going into our next duel here. Once again going first, and again, opening the Ether Barrel makes me pretty glad that I am on the Primite stuff, especially because they're going to lead with Lancia here. So this opponent's actually on a, like, very anti-meta deck, as you're about to see shortly. It's not even, I wouldn't even really call it stun. I guess they are going to use some Floodgate type effects, but you'll see here in a moment. So we already have access to Drill Beam. I'm just going to use the Primite stuff to get Roar here. Yeah, so here's Chaos Hunter coming down. At this point, I was like, okay, Lancia Chaos Hunter is, like, not the most atypical thing in the world. Then they normal summoned King Tiger Wang Hu. Now, this is obviously not a great situation for me here, right? I need to banish stuff for my Bystials, so Chaos Hunter is a problem, and King Tiger Wang Hu is a problem for my Fiendsmith stuff. But it's not impossible to out them here. I'm going to use the Roar in order to protect my Deputy from being destroyed in battle. I'm going to need that in order to tribute summon for the Druid Swarm. Now I can sack off the Druid Swarm for that Lubellion that's in my graveyard. From there, Druid Swarm F gets to send the Chaos Hunter. Now I can banish monsters again, meaning I can place Regained, summon the Magnum up by banishing their Chaos Hunter. Then I'll activate Regained to even get an extra draw here. So I had to give it my normal summon, but obviously was definitely worth it to be able to out their board here. To be fair, I could have also outed... Well, no, I couldn't have. Not the Chaos Hunter. Not with the Chaos Hunter in play. I was going to say I could have added the King Tiger Wang Hu by normal summoning, or just by flipping up Drill Beam, but again, not while the Chaos Hunter is in play. Alright, so there goes the Moon. I'm going to pivot now to Fiendsmith stuff. Again, the King Tiger's off the board. So this is going to be a really good position for us, and this is like the exact play pattern that you want to get into in playing Fiendsmith control, right? We're on far more resources than our opponent. They only have 2 cards left in hand, nothing on board, as we're about to set up a Desiree, as well as having Super Poly, Ash Blossom, and Drill Beam access. Basically, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 outs to the 3 cards they're going to have on their turn. I mean, this is just classic control deck all around, right? Grinding your opponent out of resources. I think the biggest mistake that I tend to see people make while playing this deck, and this is while my opponent's usually on the deck, I noticed this, is... I noticed that some people who play this deck really try to push for OTKs, like they pour all of their resources into a turn 2 OTK or a turn 3 OTK, but I think that is just going to play into a lot of hand traps and negates more often than not, and you really do just want to take it slow. It's a little counterintuitive to how modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Tends to play, especially because we're on Fiendsmith, which is just such a crazy engine that turbos out bodies, right? But again, it's about that control aspect. See, this game may have lasted 5 turns, but you had control of the game the entire time. Alright, here's another going second duel. This one's going to be against Blue Eyes, if I remember right. And already you're seeing a couple of cards here that are going to be pretty good for this matchup. Well, Maxie's good against any matchup, of course, but Super Poly in particular is really good against Blue Eyes. Super Poly is excellent in this metagame, by the way. It's really good against Malice. It's really good against Blue Eyes. If you play the right targets, it's really good against Fiendsmith decks too. You could play Rex Tremend, right? And be able to summon that. I almost did play Rex Tremend in this extra deck. This list, by the way, again, you'll see it at the end of the video, but this is still the exact same list from the previous video. I know there was a comment kind of expressing, and this is completely understandable, expressing concern that with the build and plays, I'm showing off, you know, only a first draft and not a final edition, but I gotta be honest, for most gameplay videos, I would just use the first draft. If I ever rebuild the deck, I usually do it on screen, and I usually do it like once a season, right? I'll just completely delete a deck and start anew, and that's my next draft. So, you know, I might have built this build like on screen, but this was like, you know, this is obviously the however many iterations of this deck I've already built, like 8 or 9 or whatever. Okay, so here they're going to make their Spirit Dragon. They did have an out for the Maxi. It was called by, I think, so it's not going to be that boring of a game here. I think my opponent misplayed here because they're going to end on Tyrant plus Spirit, but shouldn't they have been able to end on double Spirit here? Because I didn't interrupt them at all. The only thing I had was Maxi and they had call by, and they had full combo. So, I mean, either way, I'm still going to be able to Super Poly here. Definitely want to use the Primite Roar first, though. But I think they should have been able to end on double Spirit Dragon. I mean, either way, I would have been able to still Super Poly them away for Garura, so it doesn't really change what happens in the long run. Alright, so now we can go ahead and link off the Dippity for the Requiem, just start pivoting into Fiendsmith stuff. Gonna use Requiem F to, of course, some of the Lacrima from the deck. Lacrima, the Crimson Tears, is gonna flip up. Our opponent has a face-down Majesty of the White Dragons here, which means they get to destroy one of our cards because they have one Blue Eyes in the yard. So they're going to pop our Lacrima. I'll send Engraver here from the deck, and I'm also going to use the Engraver in hand. That way I can go for a Tract, get the Lurie, and then still have access to a Light Fiend body. Alright, here's the Lurie coming back, and I'm going to go ahead and summon back the Engraver here. Opponent's going to then chain the Magnum Hut in their hand. We'll use Maxi here. At this point, I suspected their card in hand was probably a Bestial because they had been getting past priority. And I'm like, okay, if it was Valor, they would have used it by now. If it's Maxi, they would have used it by now. It was getting past priority at points where Ash Blossom didn't make sense. So Bestial, Magnum Hut, or Druiswarm made the most amount of sense there. So I wanted to use the Engraver to try to bait that. Now I can Maxi to chain, try to chain for the draw here. And then we'll also be able to use the Fiendsmith in Paradise to get rid of their body. They do get summon the Maiden here, but I actually get to get rid of all of their bodies, not just the Magnum Hut, because the Desiree is going to get to send their True Light. And of course, True Light, once it goes to the yard, is going to send all their, or destroy all their monsters that send. But anyway. Alright, now we can link into our sequence, and since we did so with Garura, we get the draw as well. Another very nice little bonus from playing Super Poly there. Now, we did just use the Desiree, so I can't fusion summon it. However, I can still go for the Fiendsmith's Lacrima here. And I wanted to do this anyway because this is a situation where I can just OTK. That's a nice thing about this deck, right? Like, you do have the option to OTK sometimes. You shouldn't go out of your way to do it and push all of your resources into it, but there are some situations where it'll just naturally lead to that, like that game there. Alright, this will be the last duel of the video. Gonna go first here, leading with the Lordly Load. It's gonna let me get the Roar for Dippity. I think actually, was it Drill Beam that I searched? I already have Roar in hand. Either way, I mean, like I said, this is another reason why I really like the Primite engine. It's not just setting up the Drill Beam, right? Roar for the Fiendsmith stuff, or Lordly Load for Roar for Fiendsmith stuff, is also still very, very important. Because again, I think anyone who's played this deck can attest, when you go first and you don't open access to Fiendsmith stuff, it's a lot more rough. It's not like those games are unwinnable, but they are going to be more challenging for sure. It just feels really bad to go like, I mean, even Lubellion Regained on turn 1 is fine, but what really feels bad is, again, a turn 1 hand with all hand traps, which can happen to any deck, sure, but happens to this deck a lot more often if you're not on the Primite engine. I do still think, like I said, though, Primite is very optional. I would not fault somebody for not playing it at all. I think the the deck, the Fiendsmith Control that got top 100 the WCQ was not on Primite stuff. Spheres is another reason to play Primite stuff, though. I mean, you can make Spheres without having to go, or without the Primite stuff, but it's not as consistent. And Spheres is a really good card. Okay, I remember this game. We're playing against Stun here, and they're going to immediately Super Poly to eat my Spheres plus Desiree and summon their Rex Tremend. See, I talked about using Rex Tremend as a Super Poly target. And again, just how good Super Poly is in this meta. Thankfully, I can use the Desiree to just get rid of their Rex Tremend, but still going to have to deal with their face downs here. Definitely want to summon Baldric during their end phase before they can flip up a Floodgate. They're going to try to use Crackdown on my Dippity, since my Drill Beam's not... Actually, my Drill Beam would have still been live here, right? Yeah, that was a misplay on my part. Because I still had the Ether Barrel in hand, I shouldn't have used Drill Beam on the Crackdown. That wasn't necessary. Yeah, especially with the Tick Boo here. I do still have an out to the There Can Be Only One. And it's going to be a little bit unconventional. First, I'm going to use Baldric to battle over the face down, which ends up being Border. Then I'm going to double tribute to set the Phantasme. That's because with There Can Be Only One, I can only have one dragon in play at a time. I do want access to my Drill Beam again, and in order to get it, I'll need to summon Ether Barrel. By tribute setting the Phantasme, now I no longer have a face-up dragon on my field, which means I can normal summon Ether Barrel and get access to my Drill Beam from the graveyard again. And my opponent, realizing this, immediately is going to concede. Which definitely makes sense, because they were definitely losing the long game there. Alright, so like I said, here is the list, and as I mentioned before, this is still just the same list I used from my initial build and play video, so it's been working quite well for me. Like I said, this is pretty much exclusively what I've been laddering with this season, so this past season with Malice. I've liked it quite a bit. I like this deck a lot. The Phantasmes are, like, fine. They're not quite as good against Malice as I wanted them to be, but they're still an okay card, and the fact that they're a dragon, meaning that they're searchable off Magnum Hunt and summonable off of Spheres, does still give them quite a bit of synergy with the deck. They feel better to have against the non-Malice decks than Lancia, so I think I'm going to stick with the Phantasmes for now, but if you wanted to play Lancia, you could just take out the Phantasmes and maybe like a Veiler in order to play them. I think for me, if I wanted more anti-Malice tech, I might look to more Ghost Bells first, though. Ghost Bell is pretty good against a lot of matchups and very good against Malice, too. But it's fairly good against Malice, not about very. Anyway, thanks for watching. As always, I super appreciate you, especially if you watch the whole video all the way to the end. As I always mentioned, that really does help support smaller YouTube channels like myself, and I'm very grateful for it. But that's just gonna go ahead and about do it. So, yeah, like I said, thank you so very much again. And without further ado, let's go ahead and move on to our outro here. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which by the way is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.